Yo, what's good? It's your boy Low, man, and I'm back for another video. And I appreciate you for taking the time to check out the World According to Low podcast.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy Low, man, and I'm super excited that you chose to tune into the podcast today. The World According to Low. Shout out to the Patreon Nation that make this thing happen. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, man. Today's episode of The World According to Low.
Well, I'm excited because guess what? I am giving you my favorite 5 podcasts that I'm currently listening to. Now, I love talk, I love conversations. I'm a filmmaker by trade, and I love to find stories. I love to hear the things that help us become one as people in society. I really appreciate, learning from the experiences of others. So podcasts become natural to me. They're just something that I immediately connect to because I love gathering different perspectives about certain situations, about how people see the world, and podcasts give you that. So I'm not going to hold you up. I believe in keeping people's time. So the first thing I wanted to do on my episode was talk about some of the podcasts that I love and enjoy. Number 1, and these aren't ranked or anything. These are I'm just giving you 5 of the ones I listen to. These are not all of the ones I'm listening to, but I'll give you more as we go along. The first one that I really care about is, I care about all of them. Don't take that with any kind of weight. But there's one that's called the Black with No Chaser podcast. Now, this podcast is a recap of events that go on in the culture from a Black perspective. Now, if you're not a Black, this does not mean this does not pertain to you. No, the podcast covers something for everyone. So I think it's important that, in media, we get a majority of one perspective. This podcast gives you a perspective of someone else's from the Black community. So it's just good information to have. It's good to be well-rounded. So, if you into that, check it out. I think it's great. They cover things from culture, politics, sports, and entertainment. You name it, you'll get that on the Black with No Chaser podcast. So make sure you check that out. My next recommendation sounds similar, but it is not. My next recommendation is Black with No Cream podcast. Now, the first one was Black with No Chaser. This one is Black with No Cream. Now, they are completely different. This one is not about, I know somebody saying, oh my gosh, he's just spitting out Black people stuff. No, that is not what I'm doing. This is just the name of the title. The Black with No Cream podcast is actually hosted by filmmaker Ben Haggerty. And he has worked with people like Beyonce, Jay-Z, Disney, EA Games, and a lot of other people. But what he does is bring in a lot of creatives, and they sit down and they have these great conversations with no holds bars. They talk about whatever they want to talk about, how they want to talk about it. So, I like some of the things. One of my favorite episodes was, how to be productive from home recently. Was very good, as well as some of the other ones where he talks to Beyonce's dance captain about her career and how she got started. So it's just, if you're creative for sure, you want to check that podcast out. Moving along, one of my favorite couples that I love their platform. I love how they operate, how they function. I love the fact that they're really just transparent when it comes to tackling issues, when it comes to how they plan and how they, strategize as a family. And that leads me to introduce, it's called Dead with Kadeen and Duvall Ellis. Man, listen, they are incredible. Their podcast literally touches from love, sex, marriage, relationships. They listen to, their audience. They field questions. They do all kind of things, but they just are incredible as a couple, man. I just love seeing them. And I don't even want to say they're just as a couple. You can tell they real life partners, man. And it is beautiful to see that and hear their perspectives on things. Another podcast that and I have learned so much from this podcast, is The Future with Chris Do. Now, if you aren't familiar with Chris Do is a major influencer in branding and creativity and business. Dude is he's just immaculate. He's like the showmaster for pulling in all manners of resourceful people and helping them create and establish their platforms and how to distribute what you have learned and what you have ingested from your travels and journey through your career and life, and how to make that package into something that adds value to other people. So shout out to Chris Do for doing an amazing job. He's helped me streamline how I give content out and how I present it to others in a way that makes sense and that is really good for other people to ingest. And I really they go into therapy, man. He covers a slew of topics. I can't even begin to touch on everything he covers. Last but nope, I'm gonna give you a couple more, because now I'm getting more. But I gotta give you these. I wouldn't do my first episode any justice without talking about somebody who has become a mentor of mine, who has become a major motivator of mine, and it is my boy Gary V. Matter of fact, hold tight. This book right here, Crush It. My feng shui is good, but Crush It was one of the first books that Gary sent me. And Gary sent me that book, and it changed my life. I remember receiving it, and man, when I got it, I was like, oh man, this is such a good read. I can't put it down. If you have not read Crush It, you gotta check out Crush It. Gary has a number of books now, but that book right there, man, set me on path to redefine everything in my life, not just in my business, not just in my, how I was doing my workflows, but just my perspective and mindset, because we go through things and we get into a rut where we're working so hard to try to just make it to the next level that we a lot of times miss the beauty of what we're working towards. It's not just where we want to arrive. It's all of the things that it teaches us along the way. So I want you to take time out and watch the Gary V audio experience. Now, I'm going to give you a little prerequisites. Gary's mouth has no gauge, but that is just how Gary talks. You got to know that. Gary, he uses language that most people may find offensive, but it is not in a derogatory manner. Gary just doesn't beat around the bush. He gets straight to it, and it makes you a better person. It makes you more resilient in what you're doing, and it makes you stop and smell the roses. And I love you, Gary. Thank you so much for everything you've done for me. I know how busy you are, and for you to stop and take time out and do what you do for people like myself, I appreciate you. Last but not least, oh man, I got a couple more on here I really want to give y'all. Maybe we'll do another episode of this, but everybody needs a little funny. Everybody needs to laugh. Everybody needs to take your hair down and just enjoy some of your day. Now, let me tell you, I was so proud of my guy when he started this. My boy Kev on stage started, actually his partner in this podcast, Doughboy, they started this podcast called Righteous and Ratchet. Now, Righteous and Ratchet, man, is the best. When I tell you, man, you will not find an episode, even when they talk about things that are like really serious, they always find a way to make humor just apply to it. And you take this, the seriousness of it, but you also leave feeling positive, feeling better, feeling, connected to him. And, Kevin is just a great facilitator of people, man. He has a gift of producing things. And if you aren't, I'm also a patron of his. And man, he's creating beautiful content out there. And Righteous and Ratchet is one of those things. And Doughboy has shared his journey and his struggles and all the things that he's done in his life. And man, it's just, I'm telling you, it is something worth checking out. I love Righteous and Ratchet. It's like the Seinfeld of podcasts. They talk about nothing, but they're talking about everything. And I love it. I recommend you check it out. I could give you guys a few more, but I don't want to make these things drawn out. I want to make sure that you guys know that what we discuss, and these podcasts will get longer as I hone in on more topics. But I really just want you to know that out there, there's always information out in the world now that you can always tap into to build and feed yourself. If there's a part of your life that you feel is lacking or is under grown, then add some supplements to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you create. That's why we take vitamins. Sometimes our bodies can't produce what we need all the time because our diet or the way we live, our lifestyle. So sometimes you have to take a supplement of something. Sometimes you have to get it in places that you can't naturally produce on your own. So instead of just complaining about it and letting that area of your life dwindle, go tap into these great podcasts. Go tap into some great creators and influencers on YouTube or, on Facebook. Help that, allow them to help pour into you so that you can find out who you are and what your passion is. And then you can go develop that. I can't express how, because I work with a lot of clients and I work with people who, have to establish what their marketing is or what their branding is or what they stand for. Or I simply classify it as this. You should always know what is your why. Why do you do these things? I was able to tell you about these podcasts because they have a specific why, things that they are creating these platforms for. It's not trying to, do everything. You can only be yourself and be yourself as great as you allow yourself to be. So that's what I'm saying. If you're not knowledgeable in something, go try it. Get a book, get an audio book, get an ebook. Man, watch a video. There's no excuse for you not to maximize every possibility of what you are and try something new. That's something I really can't express enough. If you're out here, you should be able to try different things. You should be exploring something. Go try something. I talk to people all the time. Have you ever eaten sushi? Oh no, it looks nasty. Looks can be deceiving. Try it anyway. It's not going to kill you. If you haven't ever had different coffees, some of you are so predictable. You go to Starbucks or your favorite coffee house, you never try anything different on the menu. You never try anything. You never explore anything. You get the same meals all the time. And your life is being painted with the same three colors. Nobody wants to see the same three colors for an eternity. And then you wonder why people don't pay attention to you, or you wonder why they don't pay attention to your videos. You wonder why they don't care about what you're presenting because you're using the same picture trying to tell a different story. Think about that. If I kept showing you the same picture every time I had a story, you're going to be like, I've seen that already. Oh my God. Like, why are you showing me the same picture again? Or if you always came to my house and the only thing I had to serve you was cheese and crackers, how many times do you come and see me before you get tired of me offering you the same thing? There's nothing wrong with cheese and crackers, but add something different to it. Cut it in different shapes. Change the flavor. Hey, I know you guys I normally serve you cheese and crackers, but this week I mixed it up. This is a new cheese called Pepper Jack. This is a new cheese called Gouda. I've paired it with this wine this time for you to get a new experience. Grow that. There's nothing wrong with you having some starting point, but all I'm saying is when you're creating, you have to expand. And how we expand as individuals and creatives is to extend our reach through life. Go try something new. If you've never had Thai food, if you've never been to a museum, if you've never taken a bike ride, if you've never done a lot of things that you can and will control, then go do that. It doesn't have to be trips to Cabo or you having to go to Paris. Although, if you can do that, go experience it because it's worth it. It gives you something. If you've never gone across the tracks and tried, Hispanic culture, go visit some restaurants. Go visit some different cultures. You can do that. Every town has an area that is different than your own. Reach out. And a lot of times people will embrace you. If you say, hey, man, I've never experienced, like, perfect example. My first time eating sushi, I was in a restaurant with it, and I asked the guy, and I said, hey, listen, I've never had sushi. I don't know what to expect, but I am interested in trying some. Now, when I first started eating sushi, I only ate the cooked ones because he recommended that. He said, listen, if you had ever tried sushi, first, we want you to understand what sushi is and the culture of it. While we put wasabi here, while we put ginger here, while we pair these things together. And he began to explain why they put the thought process into what they were serving their own culture. Now, I think I started out with a cooked, I think it was like a salmon and maybe a spicy crawfish or something like that. It was cooked meat. And I started to branch from there. When I started to really understand what sushi was about and how the ginger adds flavor and the seasoning sweetness to it, and why the wasabi helped kill bacteria from the rawness of sushi, and how it helps fights and lines your stomach so that you don't get food poisoning. See, all those things started telling me why they were there. And the more I started to learn about these experiences, I began to want to try more of it. And then I tried the rawness, and I understood that raw fish does add flavor. The different vegetables they put in it, the cream cheese, the different flavors that come with the difference in sushi that I would have never understood. And I took that experience and I paired it with things about visualizations that I used in my filmmaking and creativity, all from just being able to embrace something new. Same thing with coffee. One of my neighbors was from Lithuania, and I remember one day I struggled with bad sinuses, and I had a terrible headache, and he asked me, I was coming home, and he spoke to me, and I said, oh man, I'm sorry. I have this terrible migraine I can't seem to get rid of, my sinuses. And he says, come with me. He brings me in his house and we go in, and he says, I wanted to make you some coffee. It's not going to be like the American version that you have. This is Lithuanian coffee, but this will cure your headache. And so he goes in, he pulls out this small, kettle that he was making a French press, espresso French press maker, and he begins to make this little thing of coffee, and he pulls out these little mugs that you had to pinch them to use them, to hold them. And he says, I recommend you take at least 1 cube of sugar. We don't do a lot of sugar in our coffee, so I want you to do it. But I want you to take time as you're sipping this to smell it, to inhale it, to really just embrace this cup of coffee that I'm giving you. And as I began to do it, I picked the little cup up and I took a deep breath first. I was a little stopped up, but what I could do, I breathed in and I took a sip, and he told me, just wait a second, let that breathe, let that marinate in your mouth. And as I progressed through this cup of coffee, this espresso, when I got to the bottom of it, my head was no longer hurting. And he taught me how to stop drinking all this coffee with sugar in it. And he started to tell me about the difference in roasting and how coffee has different ranges based on how it's roasted and how it's brewed, all the purposes that coffee could bring in the natural states that it lives. And I, from that, was never the same. And I was able to do that because I was willing to embrace change in different cultures. And this is what I'm telling you about these podcasts today. You want to be able to embrace the difference of what life can offer you, not the same thing. If you keep the same methods, you'll never explore and you'll never reach new destinations. I hope these podcasts bring you some flavor, a lot like that coffee did me, or that sushi. And I want you to know that you can see the world according to you. This is just how I see it, and this is how I portray it to my viewers and those who are willing to watch. So I want to leave you with this. Check those out. Let me know how you're doing. If you're looking for a good podcast organizer app on your phone, tablet, or whatever, I want to recommend Overcast. Overcast is an amazing app that allows you to add all of your matter of fact, you can find all of these podcasts in Overcast today. I know Apple has a built-in one for iPhone users and whatnot, but Overcast is something that goes on both platforms, and it's amazing. Now, one thing that I really love about Overcast is that you can speed up the podcast to like 1.5, which means that it'll shorten all the podcast because it cuts out any dead space. So you hear the podcast seamlessly as it plays along because it cuts out all of the dead areas and the pauses and all of that stuff. And I really love that. And it's a great way to listen to your favorite podcast without interruptions. So if you have any questions, be sure to comment. Let me know how you enjoyed this video, this podcast today. And man, thank you guys for watching. Until next time, it's your boy Lo, and I will see you according to how I see the world next time. Later. Being a creative in today's society breeds some very interesting views, most of which are often misunderstood. Each Tuesday, join me, a longtime creative and filmmaker, as I share my take on culture, interview guests, and share some of my favorite things. So if you have a desire to increase your creative side, want to start a passion project, or just want to hear some great motivation, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the world according to Lo.